Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wednesday, August 26th edition of StudentLoanJustice.org livestream. We are StudentLoanJustice.org. We are the oldest, largest, and really the only legitimate grassroots citizens group actually fighting for student loan justice. If you're new to the group, let me just say welcome. We're glad that you're here. What took you so long? We've been around for 15 years now fighting against this unconstitutional, viciously predatory, and as of right now today, completely and utterly failed student loan system. Certainly this includes federal loans, but it includes all student loans. Because all student loans, unlike every other type of loan in our nation, in fact, in our nation's history, has been uniquely and specifically stripped of the most fundamental consumer protection that you can point to. Bankruptcy protections called for in the Constitution, gone essentially from student loans. Statutes of limitations, gone from federal student loans. So nobody wants to file for bankruptcy. It's a terrible thing to have to do. But the founding fathers felt so strongly that we, the citizens, had to have bankruptcy protections. They called for them in the Constitution. Uniform bankruptcy laws are called for. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 in the Constitution. These are called for ahead of the power to declare war, ahead of the power to raise an army, coin currency, create a judiciary, ahead of the power to create a post office. So the absence of bankruptcy rights from student loans lies at the core of this problem. But folks, I am here to tell you, after having very moderately pushed for the return of bankruptcy protections for many years, going back to 2005 since we were founded, Congress failed to act. The president, Congress, our government, our elected officials failed us. And now it is a failed lending system, writ large, failed. It's done, it's toast. Tell a friend, put a fork in it. We are now calling for the elimination of all federally owned student loans by executive order. And we continue to fight, by the way, for the return of bankruptcy protections to all of the loans that the president cannot cancel directly by executive order. This is the most important fight in the country with regards to student loans, folks. We're hearing about loan cancellation from Congress. None of those plans will work. Congress, despite their great intentions, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, sarcastic smirk, Congress will never pass a meaningful loan cancellation piece of legislation. They can't. Number one, it's highly unlikely that they would ever pass a piece of legislation in certainly the foreseeable future, raising $1 or $2 trillion in tax so that they can pay for loan cancellation. That's what Congress does. And even if they were able to do that, which they wouldn't be able to, even if they were, the Department of Education is sitting there waiting to not cancel every loan that it possibly can. Let me say that a different way. The Department of Education has no desire or intentions of canceling any student loans. This is true today under Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos. It was true 4 years ago under Barack Obama and Arne Duncan. This was true going back many presidents, back to Bill Clinton and before. The Department of Education is set up to make money. They run like a bank. And they fight tooth and nail, by the way, to keep bankruptcy protections away from student loans. So folks, all the loan cancellation plans we're hearing about in the presidential campaigns in Congress right now will not work. Only the president, whether it's Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or whoever it might be, only the president can actually cancel certainly federal student loans by executive order. And the nice thing is the president has all the authority to do this without congressional approval, without needing one dime of tax money, no tax appropriation. So in other words, these loans don't need to be paid for. Because think about it, folks. The federal government owns these loans. The taxpayer already paid for these loans many years ago in most cases. They don't need to pay twice. And, the most attractive thing about canceling these loans by executive order is that not only will it massively stimulate the economy, and particularly the citizens in the country who are being hurt worse in the current recession slash depression slash corona nonsense, whatever you want to call it, there's no better way to massively stimulate the economy and not add one penny to the national debt. There simply is no other stimulus that you can point to, either planned, debated, or that's already happened, that won't add to the national debt. Canceling federal student loans will not add anything to the national debt. So hey, I'm here broadcasting from Wisconsin tonight. I mentioned that only because there's a lot been going on here in the state lately and currently as we speak, as we're watching the TV. And by the way, if you're new to the group, as I said, welcome. We're glad you're here. What took you so long? If you have any questions or comments as we go forward, please feel free to throw them out. So we're here in north central Wisconsin, about about 3-hour drive from Milwaukee. The Democratic National Convention was here last week. We went there. We were a protest of one guy, me, on an empty block right next to the Democratic National Convention. Happily, we were able to get some really good press coverage out of it. In fact, we were featured on local news all over the state for a couple days. And that's really good. Now, what's not good that's going on in Wisconsin right now, everybody, I think, can see happening in Kenosha, more racial unrest. Now, we are a nonpartisan, basically apolitical group. We rarely talk about other issues except as they relate to student loans. That's very important. We are glad that you're here, whatever your race, creed, religion, color, etc. may be. This is an equal opportunity predatory lending system. The banks, the Department of Education, the lending system, I don't think they care very much what color you are. But it is very important to note that if we are going to talk about race, it's very important that we mention that African American and other people of color, certainly economically disadvantaged communities of color, are hit very badly by the student loan problem. As of 15 years ago, the default rate for African Americans was something like 10 times the national default rate. Now, at the time, the national default rate was like 10 or 12%, so it was like 50% for African Americans. Today, the national default rate is way over 40%. So it's actually kind of impossible for the African American default rate to be like, 400%. It can only be 100%. So, but the point remains, black and brown people are not only hurt worse by these loans, but they are targeted by horrible schools who don't have the students' best interest at heart. And, just turn on your TV for 2 seconds and look at these for-profit colleges that spend more money on advertising than they do on their actual colleges. These people prey upon economically disadvantaged people, military people, but in particular people of color. And if you just turn on your TV for 2 seconds, you will see, and it may even be a nonprofit college, but any online, any college that you see advertising on television, chances are the default rate for those schools is way over like 65, 70, more recently, I'm guessing probably 80, 90%. So people of color are being absolutely trashed on their student loans. And I think it's just important to point that out, not by way of changing our group goals or anything. Our group goals remain as consistent and steady as they ever have. But it is to point out that whatever your race, ethnicity, creed, religion, sex, gender, and so forth, who you love, as they say, whatever your situation may be, we are all in this together. So our fight for student loan justice is a great way for the races, creeds, colors, religions, etc. to come together for true justice, universal justice across everybody who has student loans. I think that's a lot more productive than what we're seeing today. And again, I try not to speak about other issues except as they relate to student loans, but I will say that it serves the establishment, which wants nothing more than to perpetuate this unconstitutional, viciously predatory, hyperinflationary, enslavement-like lending system upon us. The establishment wants no changes. And by distracting the national spotlight onto other issues, whether it's what we see in Wisconsin, far away from here, by the way, right now, or whether it's any other issue, immigration, you name it, the powers that be love the distraction. So, and I know it's hard not to be distracted. I mean, most people have cable TV, etc. But I will just say, folks, that by allowing yourself to be distracted away from this very simple battle that we are fighting here for student loan justice, something that will have a tangible benefit to your life, like a big, big, big tangible economic benefit to your life, no matter who you are, by not fighting this fight and instead being distracted by other stuff, you are playing right into the hands of the establishment. And that means different things to different people, but to me that includes the media, the corporate media, etc. So, here's an easy win that we can get in a way that brings people together rather than drives them apart. So I hope some people are feeling me on that. We have had a very difficult time over the past 15 years getting attention for this issue, primarily because exactly what I just said. It's far more sexy to advertise, to put the CNN on, for the CNN people to, and the Fox News people to report on fires and floods and violence and strife and terrible things and stuff exploding and all that, than on this very basic issue of economic justice. We have never lost our argument, folks, whether it's our number one goal, at least our first goal of fighting for the return of bankruptcy protection of student loans, or our current evolved goal of canceling all student loans by executive order. So our message really has not changed. But what has been difficult all the way through is getting the media to pay any attention to it. Now, having said that, we've done a great job. We've been featured top story on 60 Minutes, and in the New York Times, New York, Los Angeles Times, and PBS, and NPR, and Fox News, and Vice News, and even Newsmax, and like Al Jazeera, and Russia Television, CCTV, did I say Rolling Stone, Wall Street Journal, you name it, Washington Post, you name it, and we've been interviewed in it at one point or another. But it's been so hard to break past all the mainstream media, break through that whole thing. So that's where you come in, folks. We now have 600,000, we definitely have 600,000 people in our group, among our petition signers, and our Facebook page, and our email list, and all our different platforms. That's enough people to really get rolling and solve this problem. 600,000 people is a big army. And really, however, I should say that we should have far more than 600,000 people, because our true size is like 55 million people in this country. In other words, 55 million people in this country either have student loans or are co-signed on them. This includes both federal and private. And 80% of those people, 4 out of 5 of everybody with student loans, most of them, 80%, 4 out of 5, will probably never be able to repay their loans. They're either not paying now, so they're in forbearance, deferment. Well, in fact, almost nobody is paying right now, but even before the coronavirus crisis, they were unable to make payments, or they were paying, and their balance was going up, not down. It's a failed lending system, folks, and I am here to tell you that we no longer have to take this shit. In fact, we never did. But now that we have like 600,000 people, it's time for us to really put the pedal to the metal. It's time for these loans to go away. They've got to be. They have become a national threat at this point. And oh, by the way, by canceling certainly all federal student loans, which is 85% of all loans, tomorrow, that would help the country heal on many levels. You know, bad things happen when the people are poor and freaked out and economically unstable. And we've got 50 million brand new economically unstable people in this country as of like February or March. So bad things are bound to happen. But that can be certainly mitigated greatly. That can be improved greatly. Like right now, by the cancellation of these loans. We are pushing President Trump very hard to do this before the election. We are pushing candidate Biden very hard to pledge to do this before the election. You know, 55 million people in the country with student loans, 44 million of whom are freaking out about their student loans. That's enough nearly to elect a president outright. You know, people don't realize it, but the 44 million people out there with student loans are enough to turn the worst landslide loss in a presidential race into a landslide victory. And oh yes, we vote. Now, where 4 years ago we had no one to vote for, either the Democrat or the Republican, because Hillary's plan was just nonsense, this year, things have changed a little bit. You know, Joe Biden is now, at least on paper, embracing the call for the return of bankruptcy protections to student loans. Frankly, it's kind of unbelievable because Joe Biden is not a very trustworthy person on this issue. We need to see a pledge from him in writing that as president on day one, he will issue an executive order calling on the Department of Education and its contractors to stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. But, you know, Joe Biden is at least mouthing the words bankruptcy. He's mouthing the words loan cancellation. And as I said before, his loan cancellation program is just nonsense and it sucks. It will never work. But most people don't know that. So my point is the student loan issue is definitely in play this time. And just by Joe Biden mouthing those words, bankruptcy, student loan cancellation, he is bound to win over tens of millions of those 44 million people who are freaking out about their student loans. Because remember, student loan borrowers skew maybe a little bit more liberal than average, but even still, my best estimate is that 60% of all student loan borrowers identify as either independent or Republican. And by the same token, I could, I suppose, equally validly say that the majority of student loan borrowers identify either as Democrats or independents. But the point remains, if that middle 40% independent, if they go one way or the other, that's like a 20 million vote bonus for the candidate who speaks to the issue. And as I said, that's enough to turn a loss into a landslide and vice versa. So, folks, it is just so important. We could get these loans canceled. I mean, and who knows how the dynamics might work out, but, you know, Joe Biden has sort of thrown the gauntlet down. Donald Trump may come in and actually, I don't know, return bankruptcy protections to student loans by executive order before the election. And in that case, the voters would swing his way very strongly. Joe Biden could counter, okay, well, fine. As president, I will cancel all federal student loans. Which, by the way, is the right thing to do because nobody is paying right now. And whenever this payment suspension ends, almost no one is going to resume paying. This lending system is dead. It's toast. Put a fork in it. It's done. It's over the moon, over the cliff. The only question is whether this is going to have a good outcome or a bad outcome. The bad outcome happens when you and me and all the student loan borrowers out there do nothing and let Washington do what Washington always does, which is screw us. And if we do nothing and let ourselves be screwed, then pretty soon the federal government and its swamp creature contractors are going to be leaning people's property, are going to be getting people fired from public employment, you know, many of the things that they're already doing, but even worse. You know, people started to be arrested 5 years ago in Texas, but it didn't have to be Texas, could have been anywhere. And, that could really start happening to a much greater extent. I know that's the craziest thing in the world, but I urge you to Google federal marshals, student loans, arrest Texas, and maybe my name, Alan Collins. And you will see for yourself that indeed is happening. We don't want that dystopian outcome. Another terrible ending is this thing just goes on for flipping ever. And we spend the rest of our lives trapped and enslaved by this indefensible debt. That's also a dystopian outcome. We don't want that. We don't want riots on the streets. But, I don't see anything but bad things happen if we continue to let ourselves be conquered and enslaved, in the words of John Adams, not me, by this tyrannical debt. That's a bad outcome. The good outcome is that the people in Washington, D.C., the elected officials at least, quit listening to the swamp and start doing the right thing, acknowledging this failed lending system for what it absolutely is, and simply writes off, cancels all federal loans by executive order without needing any taxpayer money, without adding anything to the national debt, and oh, by the way, while stimulating the economy, particularly economically disadvantaged communities in particular, and hopefully before the election. We've got a window of opportunity here, folks. We've got a window. This could happen by November 3rd. We've got, 2.5 months. But really, we have less than that because people will start voting in 2 months or less. So we've got a 2-month window of opportunity to get these loans gone. Certainly all federal student loans. And by the way, the 15% of student debt that will remain, the private student loans, and Perkins loans and older style legacy FFELP loans, we are also pushing very hard for the president and or Congress to return bankruptcy protections to the small percentage of loans that remain. So folks, I hope that I have educated you tonight. I hope that you are glad you found this group. We are glad that you found us. You may have been suffering in silence, and that is completely unnecessary. Don't do that. It's bad for your health. Hang with us. We've been doing this for a long time. We are the only group who's actually fighting to get these loans seriously gone. We're not like the fake Washington, D.C. think tanks, student advocacy groups, people who, I have to be honest, don't really want to solve this problem. If they solved this problem and got rid of this debt, then they would be out of jobs. We're not like that. I have student loans. All of our state chapter leaders have student loans. We would like nothing more than to take this banner down and throw it in a freaking museum, if not the trash can. We want these loans to disappear. So you absolutely came to the right place. We have potentially an army larger than the combined armies of all nations on earth combined, with 44 million people potentially. But all of us each individually have got to get rocking and fighting for this. And the number one thing that you can do right now is promote our petition. I've listed it up there or over there. Pasting the link to it in at least 25 places per day is what I recommend everybody do, at least for a week. Paying some money to change.org. We don't get that money, by the way. Change.org does. But boosting, promoting the petition, that gets us about a third of our signatures. I recommend doing the $25 one, and we don't have any relationship with change.org. That's all between you and them. And I hate spending money. I know. I get that. But it does help. But maybe the number one thing right now, and I always say this first, I don't know why I'm saying it last now, getting a news organization to report on our petition is so important. The media should be our friend on this. Now, maybe the mainstream corporate media right now is just so freaking distracted that they can't. But, we have an army of people, and the media can help us a lot. And we have done a lot of media in the past. Just in the past year, we've been on CNBC and the Wall Street Journal, Vice News, Rolling Stone, Coast to Coast, many other programs. So we are getting good media, but we need to get way more. And the best way for that to happen is for you right there, sitting there, you, contacting a news organization. Maybe it's a radio program, maybe it's a TV show, maybe it's a newspaper, maybe it's a magazine, maybe it's just a website. I don't know. Pick a program, a show, a platform that you like, or maybe one that you don't like. We're fine. We take all comers. We will talk to Rachel Maddow or Rush Limbaugh. We'll talk to Tucker Carlson or Tom Hartman. In fact, we love going into the lion's den. We love going into the programs that are geared against student loan borrowers, and they are out there. We will take any and all. We will defeat everybody, no matter where we go. We've been sharpening this sword for many, many years. But really, the way media happens the best is when a third party contacts them and says, hey, you should really report on this petition in this group. Because when we call them and go, hey, you should really interview us, it just never works. We have found over the many years of trying. So if you forget everything I've said tonight, remember this. If you want these student loans to go away, and I hope that you do, number one, don't feel bad about it. We are fighting the good fight. No other generation has been inflicted with this sort of injustice, economic injustice, as us. But number two, you're not helpless. In fact, you are absolutely important. In fact, you have no idea how important you are. It only takes one strong email, one phone call to the right producer, the right news program, etc., that could really get this ball rolling for us. So please, make it happen. Don't just sit there. As I said, the bad guys, they want you to do nothing. The bad guys want you to sit back and say, oh, well, this group obviously has it going on, so I'm just going to sit back, eat some popcorn, watch and wait and worry, and hopefully eventually my student loans will go away. No. We need you on this. These are your loans. This is your problem. You need to get off your ass. I don't care what any of the other groups told you. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're not going to solve this problem, and they don't want to solve this problem. It's their cash cow. Not so for us. We want this problem gone, and you should too, and it starts with you. And the one thing that we've learned over the years is that when you do nothing, when you sitting there right now, you do nothing, nothing happens. So take it upon yourself this week to get a news organization to report on our petition. It's kind of a numbers game. You might have to send out 50 requests. You may have to call 50 different news stations, but do it. And by the way, I will, at the end of this podcast, paste a link to recent media that we've done over the past year or so. And throw that in their face. They'll be impressed with that as well. But make it your mission to get any media, large or small, to do a story on this petition in the next 2 weeks. When you do, you'll be pulling your weight. That's more valuable than any donation you might make to us, any money you might pay to change.org to boost the petition, although I strongly encourage you to do that. We don't need money to solve this problem. We need you. That is our muscle. Our opponents have all the money, guys. Our opponents have all the money and the muscle and the connections and the infrastructure and all that stuff. What we have is you. But I will take our odds over our opposition any day, because we have the Constitution on our side. Founding Fathers are on our side, like them or don't. And we should have 45, if not 55 million, 44 million of whom are strongly distressed on their student loans, other people on our side. We cannot lose, but we've got to fight, and it starts with you. It starts with you getting a freaking news organization to report on our petition. Change.org/cancel student loans, capital C, capital S, capital L. We can be doing interviews all day long, guys. You don't have to do the interview. You can just point them to us, and we'll do all the talking if we have to. That's fine. We're good at it. We're happy to do it. We've got time. It's what we like to do. So you set them up. We'll knock them down. And when you do that, and when a good fraction of the people in this group do that, in the next week, we can have this problem solved by the election day. Student loans could be gone. Your federal student loans could be gone, and your private or other student loans could be at least handled. You'll have good negotiating power on them by November 3rd, when you, sitting there, get off your ass and help us. So good luck, Godspeed, God bless. I think Ed's going to be back tomorrow. I'll be back on Friday. But get a news story done. Be a media hound. It's your new job. Take it seriously. Peace.